What is going on, YouTube, and welcome back to the Retrograde right here on Dead Jester Cinema. And on this episode, we are going to look at the 1989 sequel to Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2. Now, Ghostbusters 2 was actually my very first Ghostbusters movie. I think my actual gateway into the franchise was the original 80s cartoon, but my very first film was Ghostbusters 2. It was actually recorded for me off of HBO or Showtime on an old VHS tape by my sister. So that was my first experience of a Ghostbusters movie. So I am always a little bit biased towards this movie. It always has a soft spot in my heart. So whenever I hear this being labeled as a bad sequel or a terrible sequel, or, you know, it doesn't always live up to the original is so great, but, you know, Ghostbusters 2 is so bad, I kind of take offense to that a little bit. So we're gonna dive in right now and see, is Ghostbusters 2 really that bad?
Viggy, you have been a bad monkey.
Picking up 5 years later, the Ghostbusters have been shut down and are now at different stages in their lives. Some have moved on, while some of the others haven't.
We got Karl! Let's go get a beer, all right? Yeah.
But when Dana starts getting paranormally pestered again, this time by the spirit of an evil tyrant sorcerer named Vigo the Carpathian,
command me, Lord!
the guys are reluctantly called back into action to defeat Vigo and once again save Dana, her newborn baby, and also New York City and the world.
Somebody get me the Ghostbusters.
Now, like I said before, Ghostbusters 2 is often cited as being a bad sequel, but is it really? I mean, I personally don't think so. Now, it doesn't reach the same heights as the original does, obviously. The original, like I said before, was, you know, lightning in a bottle. That's sort of hard to recapture. And, you know, this movie does kind of more or less take the same beats as the original and follows them, you know, a little step by step or sometimes to a T. But I don't necessarily think that makes this a bad sequel. Plus, I always felt like Ghostbusters 2 was darker than the original. And I know I'm saying that here in a movie where Slimer drives a bus and they bring the Statue of Liberty to life and walk it through downtown New York City. But I think there were more scenes in this that scared the shit out of me as a little kid than the original. I mean, you have Janos with his glowing eyes, Dana's bathtub trying to eat her, the river of slime like trying to eat Ray, and then of course the abandoned subway. Now, there are some people that have used that as a strike against this movie, that it didn't need to go as far as it did, especially at this point when more little kids were into it, like myself. But yes, even though it freaked me out, I still loved this movie. Plus, you know, it's good to be scared every now and then. But now we go from scary to cuteness, because this movie did come out at the height of that 80s baby film boom. You know, you had films like Three Men and a Baby and Look Who's Talking that were extremely popular. So it's not really surprising to me that Ghostbusters 2 would try to follow this trend and capitalize, you know, doing the whole Hollywood copycat thing, and center the plot of this movie around Dana's little baby Oscar. Now, it might be a bit of that forced Hollywood copycat trend, but this element with Oscar, I think, does add an interesting dynamic to Dana and Peter's relationship. And it forces Venkman to kind of mature a little bit, but, you know, just a little bit. I mean, this is still Bill Murray we are talking about.
Don't put any of those old cheap moves on me.
No. I have all new cheap moves.
Now, they did also play up a lot more of that romantic angle between Peter and Dana in this. I think a lot more than the original, because around this time is when you also had Bill Murray getting a lot of these romantic leads in comedies. I mean, look at, you know, Groundhog's Day, for example. Now, in terms of the rest of the cast, Aykroyd and Ramis are about on par with their characters from the original. Ernie is given more to do as Winston than he had before, which is always welcome. Annie Potts leans more into the look and sass of Janine from the cartoon, but isn't the same Spitfire as she was in the original movie. But Rick Moranis once again kills it as Louis Tully. The courtroom stuff with him is hilarious, and it's great to see him actually suit up and try to help help the boys at the end. But we can't step too far into this review without first talking about the big bad villain, Vigo the Carpathian.
Wasn't he also Vigo the Butch?
Now, I really do like Vigo as a villain. I mean, so much so that if I had my way, I would have an actual 6-foot-tall replica painting of him hanging up here in the house. But, you know, the wife and all. But even though I like him, I will be honest that he doesn't pack the same sort of punch and gravitas that Gozer does. And maybe because there is more mystique surrounding Gozer, as it's a deity with boundless supernatural ability. Whereas Vigo is just kind of an evil sorcerer who looks like the manager of a record store who also enjoys medieval LARPing on the weekends. Plus his whole endgame of needing a baby to be the vessel for his soul so he can live again. It's very on par with the worst of Freddy Krueger-ish plots. And what I mean by that is, why is it necessary? I mean, look at all this supernatural and cosmic shit you can control without actually having to be alive. I mean, you could transfigure yourself, you could still manipulate shit, and you could even possess people. I mean, being alive seems kind of overrated at this point. Plus, I also would have liked to have had just a little bit more explanation as to why and how he got trapped in a painting. You know, was it done by him? Did he save himself and, you know, put his soul into the painting? Or was he imprisoned there by others? You know, it's a little detail maybe I would like to have answered. As is, I think it's fine. It gives us just enough for it to make sense contextually. But just a little bit more maybe would have given the story and his character just a little bit extra.
He's Vigo!
So yeah, even though I do really like this movie, I do recognize that it is not on par with the original. It falls a little bit short, and there are certain things in here that do kind of rub me the wrong way. I do really like Janos, played by Peter MacNicol, but I will be honest, he could be a little overbearing.
He's Vigo! You're like the buzzing of flies to him!
And unlike the original, where I said that every character in that felt real, even if it was a little bit exaggerated here and there, Janos feels like a caricature, and a stereotypical stuffy and weird art guy.
Where in the hell are you from, anyway?
The Upper West Side?
Plus, at the opening of this movie, I never really liked how the Ghostbusters were immediately dismissed as frauds.
You know, my dad says you guys are full of crap.
Two-bit frauds and publicity hounds like you and your friends.
I mean, the whole city experienced the endings of that original movie with all the supernatural shit happening, including the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So how does that possibly make them frauds? Which, now that that's been addressed, let's talk about the mayor himself. If anyone would have been the champion of the Ghostbusters after the original, you would think it would be the mayor, as they single-handedly saved his ass, you know, something they'll inevitably have to do again. But here, he treats them like they're steerage passengers on the Titanic, and he's first class. And again, kind of acts like they are bullshit artists when he knows they're not. That is, of course, until it's convenient for him not to, when again he's desperate and has to believe them again.
And get me the Ghostbusters!
And this is where that writing just isn't as crisp as the original, because when you leave out little details like this, especially between one film and the other, that's what creates these little inconsistencies that makes the sequel not really connect completely to the original. But before I get to my final grade, let's go to what I think is the best part of Ghostbusters 2 and also the worst part. The best part for me is the courtroom scene. Everything from Louis Tully to the boys suiting back up and having to fight off the Scoleri brothers. It is all just great. Plus, I love the little moment of the build-up when the ghosts are about to attack, when the chairs are flying everywhere. This scene is just perfect Ghostbusters, in my opinion. The worst part of Ghostbusters 2 for me has to be Vigo being defeated just a little too easily. I don't know how they could have done it really any differently, but I think I would have liked to have seen something other than him being bukkakied by Happy Slime and then blasted even further in the face. Like I said, it's all just a little too easy. But the total combined score for Ghostbusters 2 is an 88%, which means the overall grade is a B+. And sliding in here is the grading breakdown. The direction gets an A-. I still think it's good, but I'll give it just a notch below the original. The story is also a B+. Like I said, it's a little bit copycat of the original, plus it copies the baby trend of the 80s going on at the time. Plus, I think there could have been a little bit more to Vigo as a villain, but all that being said, I still think the story is pretty good. Characters get an A-, not at that A+ level of the original, but they are still all really good. And the lowest grade here is the music. I mean, I think it's a decent score by Randy Edelman, but it's missing that special spooky touch and doesn't come close to Elmer Bernstein's music on the original. But that was my look into Ghostbusters 2. It is a B+. It doesn't reach, the A+ level of the original. It's a full letter grade down, but I still do not believe that this is a bad sequel, even if, they copycat certain beats and pacing of the original, and maybe not all the characters are there completely, and, a little bit of a weaker villain, but it still feels like Ghostbusters. It still gives me some really cool Ghostbusters moments that I love, so it's not a bad sequel. Is it great? No, but it's certainly not bad. But anyways, what were your guys' thoughts on Ghostbusters 2? Please post your grades below or post your thoughts and feelings of the movie in general. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Adios. Now, GTFO.
He's Vigo! You're like the buzzing of flies to him.